I'm Dakota Morgan, and I'll be your host, and welcome to Hidden Treasures. With me today, I have my grandfather, Jim Morgan, and my father, Luke Morgan. Today, we'll be reading some parables from the Bible, but right now, I'm going to pass it over to my grandfather, Jim Morgan, to read some parables to you.
Okay, so we're going to jump right into the Word here, and there's a couple of things I want to say before I get into the Word. First of all, we are living in the end times. And that is the time before the Antichrist steps up into power. And it was predicted 2,000 years ago that during this time, when Jesus returns to the earth, that certain things would happen. And so that's what today's program is about too. And you'll understand a little bit as I read the Bible. Now to do this, we're going to turn to Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 6. That's where we're going to start. No, let's back up a little bit and we'll go to verse 4 instead. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equality for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. The righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and the faithfulness the girdle of his reins. And at that time, this is what is going to happen as we turn to verse 6. There shall be peace on the earth, but during this time, the wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the goat, the calf, and the young lion, and the yearling shall be together. And this is the most important part, which is about today's episode. In the last part of verse 6, it says, and a child shall lead them. Now, that's a very important part, because if you look at today's media, you can go to YouTube and you can view lots of kids who are up there showing their talents and singing praises to God. Caitlin Mayer, you can look that up. And Rima, she's another little 7-year-old girl. And these kids are leading in their song, their talents, and their voice in the worship of God. And that's exactly what it's talking about here. That in the latter days, it shall become difficult. And so the children shall lead us. And that's what we're talking about today. So, that's just food for thought as the episode continues. And you will see that there is hidden treasures and hidden talents in our children, and we should encourage them and do what we can to support their growth in those things, especially when it comes to the worship of God. Well, that's my part for today.
Oh, thank you for that, Grandpa. And now I'm going to pass it over to my father, who's going to read a verse from the Bible.
So I'm going to read a parable from Jesus, and it's one that is probably an important lesson for all of us as we go through our day-to-day lives. But before I get to that, I want to share something a little special for you. So I'm going to cut to a clip right now, which is from Golden Moments. Now, I was about 10 years old for this, and I was on my grandparents' show, and I read another parable, called The Prodigal Son. Now, it's quite an interesting clip, so I'm going to let you go ahead and watch that, and when we come back, I'll read my clip, but it's just a little bit of a treasure for you. I didn't think I was on the show, but we found a clip with me on it. So I hope you enjoy it. See you in a moment.
Hi, my name is Luke Morgan, and I'd like to read a couple verses out of Luke 15, chapter 15, verse 11 to 24. And Jesus said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. He would fain to have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, but no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, how many of my hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will rise and go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him, and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck, and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven, and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet, and bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this son of mine was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and was found. Okay.
Hi, well, I hope you enjoyed that little glimpse into my childhood. That was, I actually remember after I watched it, I remember doing it. So it was one of my favorite stories is The Prodigal Son. And I think it's something that we've all faced growing up, having kids of our own. You know, our kids they do their own path sometimes, so we gotta let them walk their own path a lot of the times. So the story I'm going to read to you today is called The Good Samaritan. Now, this is a story, so before I read the story, I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson of the time back in Jesus' time. So there were the Palestinians, and then there were the Jewish people. And the Samaritans were part of the Palestinians, I think, am I right?
No. There was the Gentiles.
Okay.
There was 2 societies. One was the Gentiles, which include the Palestinians and the Samaritans and all that. And the other was the Jewish people, the Israelite people.
Okay.
Okay? And because of the animosity between the two, the Jewish people were not allowed to touch or go near the Gentiles, which includes all the other people who are non-Jewish. And so therefore, if they touched them, they became defiled and dirty. And that's where the Good Samaritan comes into play, because the Good Samaritan, and that, well, he helps out. But you finish.
We're gonna read the story. So that's the kind of the backstory behind it, and why this story is so important. That we have to be kind to each other. We have to be helpful. So I'm gonna read from. So we're in Luke chapter 11 or chapter 10. Sorry. And we're gonna start at verse 25. It's just before he starts telling the story, but it's important to lead up to it. And Jesus said, "And behold, a certain lawyer stood up." Jesus says, "Behold, a certain lawyer stood up, tempted him, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said unto him," this is Jesus talking now, "What is written in the law? How readest thou?" So how do you read it, basically, is what that means. And he answered, saying, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God. This is the lawyer talking now. With all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast answered right. This do, and thou shalt live. But he, willing to justify himself, the lawyer again, said unto Jesus, And who is my neighbor? And Jesus answered and said, A man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell upon thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, which is his clothes basically, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So he went across the other street. And likewise a Levite, and likewise a Levite, when he passed at the place, came down, looked upon him, and passed again on the other side, avoiding him completely. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him, and went to him, and bound his wounds, pouring oil and wine, and set him up in his own beast, so that would have been his donkey or his horse at the time, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, basically like 2 pieces of gold, and gave it to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, so if he spends more money, when I come again, I will repay thee. Which now of these was the neighbor unto him that fell upon thieves? Which of these 2 men was the greatest, and did the most good? And he said, He that shewed mercy on him. And then Jesus said unto him, Go, and do thou likewise.
Yeah.
So, that's, even though they were enemies, the Samaritan still stopped, showed mercy, and not only showed mercy, but left additional money and said, if he needs more, please tell me and I will pay him more. So I read this to send this message out, that no matter where you walk, no matter where you go, if somebody is in need, do not turn a blind eye, even your worst enemy. Show compassion and show mercy, and it shall be done unto you as well. And that's my story.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that the man who was beaten and robbed was an Israelite. And the first 2 men that you were talking about, that Jesus was talking about, were also Israelites. And they passed their fellow man without helping him. But because of this animosity between the Israelite nation and the Gentiles, the Good Samaritan, went to help the Jewish man.
Yeah.
That's an important aspect that you need to understand, which completes what you're trying to say.
Exactly. So my daughter, who is our host today, is actually going to read a couple of parables to you as well. So I'm going to turn things back over to her. So I'll be back in just a moment with her reading a little bit, and I hope you'll enjoy it. So I'm going to turn you over to my host. Dakota's got a really good verse to read. She's got a couple of them actually. She's going to read a parable and another verse. So I'm going to let her take over here, and she's going to read that verse to you.
So the first verse I'm going to read is the little children and Jesus. And yeah. The little children and Jesus. Then little children were brought to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked those who brought them. Jesus said, Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them for hands on them. He went on from there.
So what does that mean, Dakota? What do you think that means?
I think basically what it means is that, no matter, who you are, that God will look out for you and Jesus will look out for you, even like no matter what you've done or who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Good, I love it. All right, so you got another one to read for us?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the other one you got?
And then the other parable that I'm going to read is the parable of the workers in the vineyard. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire men to work in the vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About the third hour he went out again and saw others standing in the marketplace, doing not a thing. He said to them, "You also must go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. He went out again about the 6th hour, and the 9th hour, and then he also did the same thing. About the 11th hour he went out, and still he found others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long, doing not a thing?" "No one has hired us," they said to him. He said, "You must also go and work in my vineyard." When everything came to the owner of the vineyard, said to his foreman, "Call the workers and then pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first." The workers who were hired about the 11th hour came, and they each received a denarius. So when those who were hired first, they had expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. "These men who were hired last worked only worked an hour," they said to him, "and you have made them equal to us, who has borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day." But he answered one of them, "Friend, I am not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the man who agreed to work for who was hired last, the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last.
What do you think about that?
Uh,
What do you think that means?
Maybe like the people who were working in the vineyard who came there in the first hour, they thought that wasn't fair, so they went back to the workman, and they asked for more, but the workman said that, "Well, it's my money, so I can do what I want with it."
Yeah. They agreed to work for a denarius, and that's what he gave them what they agreed. The people you hired later, they also agreed to work for a denarius, regardless of how long it was. They agreed to do that work, and that's what the kingdom of heaven is too. It's if Jesus has given us the task, it doesn't matter when we start it or how long we've been doing it. When Jesus passes us a task, we do it, and the rewards are equal. Would you agree with that, there?
Yes, he has a very good understanding of how Jesus rewards his faithful servants. And she's done an excellent job of hosting this program. And we're expecting to see better performances and hosting in the future.
I think we will have Dakota back on reading again. I think she read very well today.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let Dakota do the closing. You're going to close up for us?
Okay, thank you for watching. We will now do our closing, and remember to subscribe at the bottom. And now we'll do our prayer. Thank you, Lord, for to keep all the people who have been watching this safe as they go through their day-to-day lives.
Amen.
Amen.
So thank you again for watching. And if you did enjoy the show today, please leave a comment and subscribe at the bottom. And we'll see you all again next week.